Story events. The essential element. With guidance and support, identify major events in familiar stories. Essential question. How do we identify major events? What is an event? An event is an action or something that happens in a text. Essentially, it's what happens in the story. Some examples for students could be watching animals, riding a bike, skateboarding, rollerblading, or fishing. This would be a great poster to have in the classroom or show during remote learning for visual support. Types of text. Text could be in many different forms, such as an actual book, a poem, which you could focus on one line of the poem, a photograph of the student, or a photograph in general that you found online that supports your learning, an illustration, or a drawing. In addition, it could be a video where you could stop it and pause it to display a particular event that you would like to bring attention to. To make major events personal, I would typically start with birthdays. I would create a birthday chart or a book which indicates the students' birthdays in the classroom, potentially the teachers or paraprofessionals, or those in the school community. In addition, you could also create a class calendar, which has important dates that relate to the students, including the 100th day of school. It could also include holidays and daily events on their schedule that they enjoy, such as physical education or perhaps recess. Some guiding questions to help identify events in the story or text could be, what was the action happening? What did the character do? If there is a character in the story. What item was used, such as a snowball? What did the character do with the item? Did they throw the snowball? Did they make a snowball? When introducing events, or particularly any story, I typically like to start with a vocabulary board. And I like to create them on Jamboard. This way you can customize it with as much or as little information as you need. I typically like to start with the text box for that print, and I'll add the word. I also like to include the actual image, so when they see it in real life, they'll be able to identify it, in addition to a black and white drawing, which could be found online, or Boardmaker is a pretty popular program that many people use. So in our case, we want to highlight footprints and a snowball. So again, I like to introduce the vocabulary board to provide the students with the language, the image that we'll be discussing, and events that they should pay attention to. What was the action happening? So this would be a text that I would provide the student. It would be an image perhaps with the sentence, Peter made a snowball. And now that they've had the vocabulary board, they may be familiar now with the term, the item, snowball. So now that they have the vocabulary board and the text and we've had a chance to review it, I typically like to provide a story organizer to help students gather the information and focus on the topic at hand. I created this story events board, once again in Jamboard, by selecting a shape. In this case, I chose the square and created a box here. And then I added a text box and typed the word text. Another box here. Who do you see? And a longer box, and I just dragged it to make it longer. A longer box here, a little bit wider. What was the character doing? This is a general story events board that I created. Again, you can customize it to put as much or as little information as you need and you feel your students are able to handle at the particular time that you're teaching the lesson. So in this case, to customize it, we've made the storyboard about Peter and the events in which Peter partook. So here, as I mentioned prior, we have the text. Who do you see? And this is where the character would go. And here, what was Peter doing? So for some of our nonverbal students, we may have the option to drag and drop or provide the option to write the answers. So to begin, the text. What text did we use? This is the text from the story. Students could drag Peter made a snowball. Who do you see? Students could drag Peter's picture. And if they are able to write Peter's name, or perhaps just the letter P, they could select the pen option and write Peter. And now for the event. What was Peter doing? Students can take a snowball and move it into the box. In addition, they could write made a snowball, or they could just move the snowball. So the story organizer helps to highlight the information you would like students to take away. The text, the character, and what Peter was doing. In conclusion, events are an action that happens in the story. Text can be in the form of videos, photos, illustrations, poems, or books. Provide vocabulary boards to introduce actions students may not have knowledge of. And story organizers are helpful to highlight events